Monday, June the 22nd. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We don't have a formal presentation tonight, but I did want to make an announcement to kind of remind everybody about our donation drive that we have going on for Ray Peck Public Schools Foundation. As you know, they've had some difficult times, as Sonia has witnessed with the Belton Foundation as well, the difficulty in raising funds. And so they have this food drive. There's food drive, hygiene products, school supplies, new socks and underwear are mostly the products that are needed. And it's going on between now and July the 10th. Several places you can drop off your donation. Here at Raymore City Hall, we're in Centerview. You can drop it off at City Hall. You can drop it off here at Centerview, at the Raymore Chamber of Commerce, and South Metro Fire Stations 1 and 3 are also receiving those items. So I wanted to remind everybody about that. We are getting some donations in, but we're hoping to get a few more, and I wanted to help that out. I know that Erica has worked very hard to get the word out on that too, and so I want to help support her and her efforts to support the CAN program. So I'll keep that in mind. I thought the message might get lost at my last message at the end of the meeting, so I wanted to kind of go over that during the presentation section. We have no personal appearances tonight, so we'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Krass to make a report for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In addition to my written report, I wanted to give an update on Westgate Drive. The contractor started in earnest this week, a little bit behind where we would have liked it to be, but I think they should catch up and get moving in more quickly here in the near future. Right now, they're working on the subgrade. The next phase will be installing the storm sewer, and then curb and gutter, and then the pavement. The curb project is currently working on Sunset Lane and some other areas around the city. That concludes my staff report, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody have any questions of Mike? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Krass. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report for the Parks and Recreation Department as soon as his area is prepared.
Thanks, sir. Mayor, members of the council. Good to be with you tonight. I did submit a written staff report as well. Just want to give you some updates on some things going on. As you know, Parks and Rec is summertime's busy time, and we are in pretty much high gear. First and foremost, tomorrow night at 6 p.m., the park board is inviting you to attend a ribbon cutting ceremony for our playground at Recreation Park. We will do that right before our park board meeting here at 7 o'clock. So 6 o'clock at Recreation Park. We'll let you guys get out and play, test the equipment, see how it works for you, and then you can bring your kids and your grandkids out later. So that's tomorrow night. We do have playgrounds and construction still going on at TB Hanna and Memorial Park. Memorial Park scheduled should be done within just days. So would like to do something with that once it's complete as well. But as soon as construction's over and we've run the punch list, it will be open regardless to the public. Our baseball softball league, surprisingly, is just super successful right now, given the limitations that we have and the things that we've had to go through. But right now, I put in my staff report, we have over 400 players. There's 37 teams, and we have 5 independent teams. And we are doing very well in selling concessions as well. So people are excited about being at the ballpark, and we're happy to be out there and giving them a place to go. Our summer camp as well is doing very well. We have 95 kids registered to attend the camp, and we're averaging about 60 kids a week. So it's going very well. We're unable to do field trips and travel, so it's a lot of in-house, and they're using our park system and the rack pretty hard right now, so it's good to have those amenities with us. And just a couple more things. In terms of special events, as you guys are aware, since you authorized it and told me to do this, our Spirit of America event is moved from July 3rd to September 11th, that Friday night. We are in the planning of that. Everything's worked out, ready to go, so looking forward to that event. We have, after that, our next event would be our movie night in the park, which is Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. We're looking at July 31st at Memorial Park for that, weather, allowing us to do that. And as of right now, we are planning on the mud run. We're in the planning stages and getting ready for that. So that concludes staff report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mustine. It's a good, comprehensive report. I've been driving by both Recreation Park and TB Hanna Station on an average of about every 3 days or so, and it's really impressive to see the progress that's coming along at both of those. The last time I was by TB Hanna Station was probably 3, 4, maybe 5 days ago. The concrete pad's obviously finished for the spray ground. Do we know when the above-ground structure is going to be here? And
Yes.
we're going to start putting that in?
We had a pretty good meeting today, ironed out some dates and some things going on. Right now with the pad itself, we're waiting for the cure. They had the testing done. We're waiting for the results of that. Our general contractor said he had them in hand, should give those to us. That should dictate when we can actually get on there and do that. Regardless of that, we put a 30-day curing process, which is typical. So to give you that date, it would be the week of July 13th. Equipment is on site and put up, and they said it should be right at 3 days total of installing it and connecting it, and then we can get a walkthrough on that for the spray equipment itself.
That's great. Thank you.
Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mustine, great presentation, and thank you for that. I want to quickly mention, this is an unofficial survey of 2, my children, but they're really happy with the playground at Rec Park. I went there Friday night. It was already their second time there. They're there as we speak right now. They're now there for the
Good.
4th time, but it was packed on a Friday night. It was like being at Worlds of Fun. I couldn't believe how many kids are out there.
Yeah.
And it was ages probably 4 all the way to some junior high kids that knew my daughter. So I know that was a new vendor that we tried out, but the equipment looks really nice, and it's getting used a lot. So job well done. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad they enjoy it.
Yes, Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, excellent presentation this evening, Mr. Mustine. But if we could go back real quick on the Spirit of America and shifting that from the 4th of July weekend to the 11th.
Yes.
I have personally received some questions and calls on why we chose that particular day as opposed to any other day that could possibly be on the calendar for that. And if you could quickly address some of the conversations that went on and deliberations to come to that particular date.
Okay.
Because some perceive it may be a poor taste, to use their terms, for it to be on that day as opposed to probably another day. And I know we're not celebrating that cause of the day, but more so the first responders and the patriotism behind it.
Yes.
But if you can kind of go into that a little bit.
I would be happy to, and I'm going to pass it to Mr. Fearborn.
The conversation that went into the day was, as July 3rd became impossible, what is the next national day of celebration where people come together for things like that? Honestly, there is a lot that goes into Patriots Day. It is a celebration of first responders, and rightfully so. Many of them lost their lives on that day for this nation. It is a celebration of America coming together, the same way that July 4th is. In the current climate, I would argue that either of the days may be of concern to certain people in the community, but it put us outside of, it gave us a for sure date relative to the current COVID crisis that's in place, where we felt like we wouldn't be canceling the date, and we wouldn't be pushing the date back to an even later date in the fall where it may be even more problematic. And that was the sum of the conversation that took place, sir.
Thank you. And I knew that staff had done due diligence in choosing the most appropriate day. But I just wanted to give courtesy to the individuals who's asked me to bring it forward. I knew there was, and we've debated it on on council as well. So thank you for that detailed explanation. Thank you, Mr. Mustine.
Any other questions of Mr. Mustine? Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was under the understanding originally we said Saturday the 12th, but when you looked at September, we're going to be so busy on that Saturday at Rec Park, there's no way we could have put both together. So we assumed we moved it back to Friday. Was that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. Ms. Harmer was ill today, so there will not be a communications report tonight. Nothing serious, I am told. Last item, the council's next meeting, that next week, of course, is the 5th Monday. There will be no meeting scheduled for the council. Your next meeting is a work session on July 6th. As a reminder to the council and the public, there will be a single item on the agenda for that evening. Chief Zimmerman will be making a report that we had previously discussed with you relative to the policies and procedures and personnel and all things that are police department related that can be discussed with you all. That I think there have been some legitimate questions placed out there by the council. And speaking of legitimate questions, because the work session format does not lend itself to audience input, and the mayor and I have discussed this, we would encourage any member of the public that would have questions of Chief Zimmerman that involve those policies or procedures of the police department to please email her ahead of time so we can address those questions. Her email address is jzimmerman@raymore.com, just like it sounds. And if the council has any questions on that particular session tonight, I'm sure the chief would be willing to answer any of those questions relative to the format, or I can as well. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Holman?
Just one, is that going to be at City Hall, sir?
Right now, we're scheduled for City Hall. The chief and I plan on kind of, as much as we can, surveying to find out how many people are going to be here. If it looks like there's going to be a crowd, we may have to come back over here so we have additional room. If it overflows, we could overflow it there or out onto the patio as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions for Mr. Fearborn? If not, we'll move on. We have no item under committee reports. We have, next item is consent agenda. We have 4 items under the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman?
Sir, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented to include item A, City Council regular meeting minutes from the June 8th, 2020 meeting, the City Council special meeting minutes from the June 8th, 2020 meeting, the 2019 curb project acceptance and final payment, and item D, City Hall painting acceptance and final payment.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Barber?
I will second the motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the, well, we'll go ahead and do the hand count. I was going to do a roll call. All those in favor? It's unanimous, 8-0. I keep forgetting what meeting I'm at here. We had our ESB meeting here last Wednesday, and we do a roll call vote at everything. The unfinished business is up next. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3551 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3551 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving the development agreement with Compass Health, Inc. for the extension of Sunset Lane.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman?
I move that we approve Bill 3551, the development agreement with Compass Health Incorporated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Barber?
I will second the motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3551. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3550 by title only?
Second reading of Bill 3550 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, establishing an intergovernmental agreement with the Raymore Peculiar School District to provide school resource officer services for schools in Raymore and the East Middle School.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item. Mr. Holman?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the agreement with the Raymore Peculiar School District for SRO services.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Barber?
I will second the motion.
Thank you, sir. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3550. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3532 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3532 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from A Agricultural District to PUD, Planned Unit Development District, a 4-acre tract of land located north of the existing Foxwood Springs development in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. This item requires a public hearing. I will open the public hearing at this time, and I'll ask for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Will Knowlton, representing the American Retirement Corporation, who is the owner of the Foxwood Springs property, did file a request to reclassify a 4-acre tract of land from agricultural to planned unit development district. This 4 acres is located north of the main Foxwood Springs development. It's generally in the area where their maintenance building is, and if you've been to the back of the property, it's also where they have their small thrift store that they have items for sale within. So it would include that building and the land area around that building, the parking lot area, et cetera. The request for the rezoning initially came forward. There was a potential sale of the property and wanted to include the maintenance building because it serves the main complex development. So the idea was to split off that 4 acres from a larger 58-acre undeveloped tract and include it with the Foxwood Springs property. And rather than have 2 different zoning classifications, wanted to have the consistent PUD zoning over all the property. So that was the driving force of this request. There has been no discussion of any improvements that would be done to the property, no new buildings on the property. It's fairly well built out, even with 4 acres. The building and parking area covers most of that land area. The remaining 54 acres of undeveloped land will keep the agricultural zoning district. So no development would occur back there unless a request came forward in the future to rezone that 54 acres. The request tonight is a public hearing. I do want to enter into the record the notices that we sent to all the adjoining landowners, a notice of publication in the Journal, our Unified Development Code, the application that was submitted, our growth management plan, the staff report submitted to you this evening, and the conceptual site plan or the zoning layout. We did hold a good neighbor meeting on this request. That was all the way back in March. Then with the COVID-19, the actual public hearing with the Planning Commission didn't occur until much later. The Planning Commission did submit proposed findings of fact on this rezoning application, and it was at their June 16th meeting where they voted 8-1 to accept those findings and forward this request for rezoning to the City Council with the recommendation of approval. I will note Mr. Knowlton is in the audience if you have questions of the applicant.
Thank you. Any questions, Seth? Mr. Holman?
2 questions, Mr. Cataret. One, does American Retirement Corporation, do they also own the 54 acres of undeveloped land to the north that will remain agricultural? That's
Yes,
question
sir.
1. And then the second question was, I always ask this when there's any kind of a split vote. Can you tell me what the reasoning was for the single dissension on planning and zoning, sir?
When there is a dissenting vote, the chair calls on the individual. They indicated that they just weren't convinced on the reasoning for the zoning change.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed the comments from the Good Neighbor meeting. That was more directed looked to me like more of an intimate sell of the property from just some of those questions. Was that your take during the meeting?
I would agree with that, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jim. Mr. Knowlton, would you care to address the council at this time?
I have nothing to add to Mr. Kettert's report, but I just wanted to make myself available for any questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions of Mr. Knowlton? Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As this is a public hearing, we now open the floor to anyone from the public that cared to address the council on this particular item. If there is someone, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. I see no one approaching, so we will close the public hearing at this time, and I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve Bill 3532, Foxwood Springs rezoning.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Barber.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3532. Any further discussion? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I want to let Mr. Carteret know I appreciate your report on the loan dissension. It seems a little bit odd to me. This seems like a reasonable request. You're asking for the zoning of a piece of property that is already attached with an improvement because it has a structure on it to the same zoning designation as the main building and everything else that is there versus the undeveloped property to the north. That seems like a reasonable request to me. That's why I ask the question, but I'm certainly in support of this, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3554 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3554 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, vacating the alley right-of-way located in Block 8 of the original plat of the City of Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. This item also requires a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing at this time, and I'll ask for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Bill 3554 was proposed by city staff to request the vacation of a 14-foot undeveloped alley that's currently in Block 8 of the original plat of the City of Raymore. Block 8 is entirely owned by the city. It's the location of TB Hanna Station. This alley, just like all the alleys that are platted in original town, is a north-south oriented alley. There are utilities within the alleyway, so within the vacation ordinance is the establishment of an easement over that to give all the utility companies rights to have access. The main utility there would be the overhead power lines, and I believe there's a city main through the alleyway as well. The alley vacation does require a public hearing, so we did advertise for this evening. I want to enter into the record the notice of publication in the Journal or Unified Development Code, the application that was submitted, the growth management plan, and the staff report. The real purpose of this, it was discussed as part of our site plan when we did the site plan overall for the entire park. Clearly, we don't want to give anybody the ability to drive through the park, and if we leave this platted, they technically have the right to utilize the alley. So something that we had planned to do, we need to get that taken care of before the park's completed, and so that was the real purpose and the driving factor of this request. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on June 16th. They did vote 9-0 to accept the staff proposed findings and forward this request for alley vacation to the council with the recommendation of approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Mr. Holman?
Just a historical curiosity, because this piece of land dates back to the very beginnings of our town, back into the, after the Civil War, late 1800s, 1870s. I'm just curious, how old is this alley easement? Do you have any idea?
It was part of the original plat before any of the city was developed. This right-of-way was created.
That's what I figured. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. As this is a public hearing, again, it is an open public hearing, and anyone in the audience that'd like to address the council at this time on this particular matter, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one step forward, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. I move that we approve Bill 3554, the original town Block 8 alley vacation.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Barber?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3554. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Holman?
Just a comment to dovetail off what I said before. My guess is that this original alley easement was probably done for horses and wagons to be able to get close to the railroad tracks and pick up passengers or freight over there. So this one dates back to Raymore long before any of us knew it, certainly.
Well, not only that, but as you remember, when I first came here, that building was still standing because that's where the police department was, and there was an actual dock back there for the general supplies for the general store that had previously been in that building. So I'm sure they used it for the deliveries as well. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3555 by title only?
First reading of Bill 3555 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the East Brook at Creekmore First Plat located in Section 4, Township 46 North, Range 32 West, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Cataract to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Cooper Land Development has submitted a request for another phase within the Creekmore subdivision. This would be known as East Brook at Creekmore. This is a detached single-family development. First phase would be 34 lots. It's generally located on the west side of Madison Street between Elizabeth Drive and the Creekmore Maintenance Building to the north. Back in November of 2019, if you recall, we came forward with the Sixth Amendment to the Creekmore MOU. It was at that time that Cooper was proposing a different style of lot and home within the Cooper subdivision. So in the Sixth Amendment, that established all the development standards for what will be this East Brook subdivision. This is a subdivision phase that's being proposed by Summit Custom Homes. They would be the sole builder within this phase. Within this East Brook development, we've created lot sizes have been reduced in width and overall square footage. The idea there was to propose a new housing option for those buyers within the Creekmore community. With the decreased lot width and lot size, you'll see a little bit smaller home size than what Creekmore typically has seen, and these will be limited to 2-car garages. We basically will have a 30-foot wide home. I don't call it a shotgun home, but it'll have a lot more depth to the home than it will have the width, but it will be limited to a 2-car garage. But it will have use of all the amenities within the Creekmore subdivision. The Planning Commission has submitted proposed findings of fact on this final plat. It was at their June 16th meeting where they voted 9-0 to accept those findings and forward this final plat to the City Council with the recommendation of approval. There were 2 conditions. There's just 2 minor changes that need to be done to the plat prior to its recording. I did include some of the home samples that Summit would plan on building in here, so you had some idea of what the homes would look like and the overall size of the home. But we have the development agreement for the subdivision included as well. That would conclude staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Cataract? Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I look at the renderings of the houses that you have listed here, and thinking through several conversations we've had in the past with regard to housing options in the area here, I don't think these are going to be in the 400,000 and up range.
Believe the price point of the homes, I believe we're looking 250 to 325,000, again, depending upon if basements are finished or any other amenities within the home itself.
Outstanding. So this definitely provides that entry, I don't want to use that term, but a more market accessible home for those who are wanting to buy a home here in the Raymore area.
One of the ideas I know Cooper has is to get individuals within their community to allow them to buy up or buy down and stay within the community.
Excellent, excellent. Good. Thank you.
Jim, I don't think I don't recall them covering it at our P&Z meeting, but did they say whether this is maintenance-free, or are these all maintained by the owners?
These will be maintained by the owners.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Thank you, Jim. I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I move that we approve Bill 3555 Eastbrook at Creekmore first final plat.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Barber.
I will second the motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3555. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3556 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3556 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the Brookside 10th Final Plat, replat of Tract X and Tract Y, located in the east half of Section 20, Township 46 North, Range 32 West, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Bill 3556 proposes a replat of Tract X and Tract Y, which is in the Brookside 10th Final Plat. This final plat, the area of these tracts, is actually south of Bristol Drive, off of Cedar Ridge Drive. When the initial plat was submitted, these tracts were not included as buildable lots. There was for a temporary period of time during construction, there was a detention basin on one of the lots, a temporary detention basin that has since been removed. So it was not classified as a building lot at the time, and so this replat actually establishes that those lots back as buildable lots. And then also proposing to split Tract Y into two different common area tracts. I would note a side note on this subdivision, Bristol Drive, which has been an item that's been discussed for many, many years. We'll have the contractor moving in hopefully within the next 2 weeks to finish that connection. So I know we've all been looking forward to that for a long time. That makes a nice connection between Brookside and Stonegate, a more direct route for families to get to the Stonegate School. The Planning Commission did submit proposed findings of fact on this final plat, and it was at their June 16th meeting that they voted 9-0 to accept the findings and forward this replat of Tract X and Y to the council with the recommendation of approval. I've also included the development agreement for the replat. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Mr. Holman.
One for Mr. Fearborn. Can we give Mr. Cataret the Good News Award for tonight, sir? Because I think he's earned it.
Hey, Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cataret, how long has that not been a retention basin? In other words, how long has that lot been quote-unquote dry?
I'm thinking 2 years 2 to 3 years. It's been established as a mobile property for some time.
Okay. And so there won't be any need for disclosure for the people buying that property and building a home on it that it was once a retention basin 2 years ago?
I don't know about whether or not, I can't speak to the disclosure, but I can indicate when it comes time to do foundation work on that property, there will be soil boring, soil tests done, whether or not the building itself would have to be piered. that would all be determined at the time they actually go to construct on the lot. Because that certainly would be a question that our inspectors would have.
The city itself has no issues with this property being built on at this point?
Not at
It's
this
been 2
point. It
years.
was always planned to be a building lot. The basin was just temporary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Burke.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Mr. Carteret, wanted to ask you, I know at one point, and goes a ways back, there was a huge amount of rebar in the stream and all kinds of construction refuse all over that whole section. Is that, any of that located within this tract that is?
Not within this tract. There were many years where we had the culvert was partially constructed. As part of the reconstruction of that culvert, there was a lot of cleanup that the city ordered to be done of the stream bed, the stream area, this property as well. To our knowledge, unless something was recently deposited there, it should be a clean property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, Mr. Carteret? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3556, Brookside 10th replat of tracks X and Y.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Barber.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, sir. And motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3556. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. The next item is the appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Years past, we've opened that up to the council for consideration. I have, as the mayor, chosen to serve if that is the will of the council. But certainly there is an opportunity for the council that they may want to designate someone else as a new member to serve. So I would open that up for discussion at this time. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I think that the current system with you on P&Z has been fantastic. You've lent a great voice to that. You've been kind of a calming voice, if you will, and a voice of experience. And my preference would be to remain with you and you alone on that board if you so desire, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, and I'm happy to do that for the group. And if there's no objections to that, I'll continue to serve unless someone else has another Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the same comment I make every time, thanking you for your service there. You do a great job. I know I've asked this before. Now we have a mayor pro tem, and we have for several years. Do we want to consider having somebody as an alternate on the nights that, if you possibly can't make it, that the mayor pro tem would sit in?
Mr. Fearborn, you've got a...
Thanks, sir.
Or Mr. Zur?
To do so would require a change to code at the very least and possibly charter, because it is spelled out how this occurs.
You probably said that before, and I probably forgot, so I apologize. And I'll apologize for next year when I mention it again, so, very good, thank you.
Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do also support you continuing being on the planning and zoning. I think it's been helpful for planning and zoning. I think it's been very helpful for this council to have you there.
Well,
and
thank
I
you,
might
sir.
add on what Councilman Barrington said, there would nothing that would keep the mayor pro tem from attending a meeting that you weren't able to be there, wouldn't be able to vote or have any process in the meeting, but there would be nothing that would keep them from attending the meeting, just report back to you. So that may be a suggestion.
Okay. Well, thank you. Anyone else? Nothing? I'll continue to serve on that. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item F, the selection of the mayor pro tem. I'll go ahead and read this from section 3.4 of the city charter pertaining to the mayor pro tem. Council shall elect annually from among its members a mayor pro tempore. The mayor pro tem shall assume the powers and duties of the mayor during the absence or disability of the mayor, or if a vacancy occurs. While assuming the powers and duties of the mayor pro tem shall retain his or her vote as a council member, but shall not possess the additional mayor voting power provided by section 4.4 Section A, and shall not possess the mayor veto power provided by Section 4.4, paragraph C. So with that, I will open the floor and for discussion. Yes, Mr. Holman.
Your Honor, I would like to nominate Councilmember Reginald Townsend as our next mayor pro tem, and the pay raise and all the riches that go along with that.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'd like to second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Is there any further discussion?
Well, it sounds like it also includes attending P and Z meetings now. But no, I humbly accept it. I think the council's vote of confidence in it, should it pass.
I was going to say, we haven't voted yet.
Exactly. Should you vote yes, I accept and thank you.
Still kidding.
Thank you for the nomination.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Holman.
If that item is settled, I do have a presentation to make, if you will.
Well, we need to vote on it. Can we go ahead and vote on it?
He's the only candidate, but sure, what the heck?
Oh, okay. Well, just to make it official, all those in favor? Sure. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Congratulations, Mr. Townsend. Now, Mr. Holman, your presentation.
So this item that I'm about to present to our new mayor pro tem was given to Councilmember Barber when he was mayor pro tem and filled in for you at a meeting in Pleasant Hill, wasn't it? And it's a plaque with the name pro tem, Mayor Raymore Mayor. And so on the back, we have been inscribing our names and the years that we served. And so this is being passed on to you, sir.
I like it. There you go.
Mr. Mayor?
It's the only accoutrement that comes with the position, but
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
thank you all. Yes, Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I would add, the reason there's not a name on that is they didn't know my name, so they just put pro tem.
And I remember when you went over there. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. The mayor had prepared name plaques for everybody, and at the last second, they had to make one up for the mayor pro tem, I guess, because I told them at the last second I couldn't be there. Well, they also had one made up for me. And, yeah, it was pretty funny. All right, so moving right along, we've now come to the section for public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. I see no one coming forward, so I will move on to the mayor-council communication, and I'll start with Sonia tonight.
I have nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just have a couple, 3 comments. We had a tremendous amount of good news tonight at the meeting with the opening of some new park equipment and potentially opening of some more park. And from what Mr. Barrington had said, it's going over very well. And it's good in this time that we live in right now to have some good news. Also from community development, I know we're short on lots, and so we're starting to maybe get some inventory on that. And that's also some great good news. And also some good news for Mr. Townsend. I'd like to congratulate him for being elected Mayor Pro Tem unanimously. So best to you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Barber stole my thunder a little bit, but I would concur with his statements. It's kind of been that little swirl or eddy under the water. Raymore's a popular place, and people like to live here, but we've changed over the past 10, 15 years when you had multiple housing choices in multiple subdivisions, and over the years, those have filled up, and so the housing choices have dwindled quite a bit, and so it's really good to see this coming back around. This is something that had been a little bit of a concern of mine, and this news was fantastic tonight that we're going to have a lot more open lots and building opportunities for people and houses and things to purchase. So that's really good news. Thank you, sir. And I would concur on the congratulations to Councilmember Townsend. It's been a fun year, but it's a lot better when someone smarter and better than me takes the job. Thank you, sir.
To Mr. Barrington.
No comments tonight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, again, congratulations, Mr. Townsend. I know you do a fine job. You've done a great job as president of our Optimist Club, and we respect you. And thank you. Congratulations on that. To come back and again thank Police Chief Zimmerman for having the vision to talk to us about moving our 4th of July celebration into September. And originally it was September 12th, Saturday, and then once we got into it, Rec Park was so busy, we had to move it back a day to the evening of September 11th. Again, thank you for having that vision. It's going to work out very well for the city. I want to say thank you to Nathan Mustine. Thank you, Nathan, again. As usual, you've just come to the forefront of your position of the Parks and Rec and your crew, and doing a fantastic job on these playgrounds and these uplifting the spray park. The playground, you guys have just a magnificent job through all the problems with COVID-19, all the delays, and all the situations. You've held on. You've been ready to go at a drop of a hat when you had the opportunity to move, and you've moved quickly and efficiently, and I thank you for that. Again, doing a great job, Nathan, as usual, and thank you for that, and your crew and your staff. And thanks to the city staff for working so diligently, as they do through the COVID, to get us where we're at today, to try to move us forward, and of course, the advancement of our growth of the city. We did it last year, weren't sure how fast we could even grow into this year, and it's done phenomenal. So through all the downsides of everything. So again, thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to thank the Parks Department. There was a local neighborhood issue in Silver Lake, and some people were discussing the small park that's there, and whether they'd want to put an assessment, on each owner. And so I simply went to our website and shared 3 different sets of information about all the 3 awesome new parks that we're putting in that are currently either done or almost done. And I didn't go back and look at any comments after that, after I shared those, because I thought, well, that pretty well speaks for itself. The amazing work that the Parks Department is doing. Although my children enjoyed the old equipment, someday maybe somebody else will in my family will enjoy the new equipment. But it was just, I thought the same day, I thought, well, didn't I just see that's coming out? That there are people out there, and I think it was the same day with the video of you demonstrating the equipment. So that was awesome. And I might as well go ahead and do a Fort Leonard Wood report. Talked to my son, actually got to talk to him for an extended period yesterday. And one of the things that really struck me the most was he made a comment about all the people from different countries that I said, well, how many people there are from Missouri? And I don't know why I said that. It was kind of a dumb comment later as I thought about it. And he went ahead and proceeded to tell me about the family that he's making in his platoon of people from Cameroon and Nepal and a couple other countries in Africa and Asia. And I don't know, I thought my son would meet people from different cultures and different places in college, but I had no idea what would be in store for him in basic training. So it was kind of interesting. Thanks.
Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first of all, congratulations to my colleague and fellow Ward 1 Councilman Townsend, on being elected as Mayor Pro Tem. I know you'll do a great job. It's well-deserved. As your fellow Ward 1 Councilman, are there any perks with that? I just thought I'd check and see anyway. I also want to thank the Parks and Rec, Mr. Mustine, on your report this evening. I'm especially excited by the crowd you're saying that you see at the baseball and softball games. I'm in great hopes that with the lack of professional sports, maybe some of the local residents who might not attend some of these games will get out and cheer on our youth and be there to support them. That would really be good. Also, Mr. Carteret on Bristol Drive in Brookside. That was great news as well. I know the residents of Brookside and Stonegate will be very excited about that, especially those who take their kids to Stonegate Elementary. And this being our last meeting before the 4th of July, I want to wish everyone, fellow council members, you, Mr. Mayor, staff, and all of our residents of the city, a happy 4th of July. Please stay safe out there, and we look forward to seeing you after the holiday. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just want to reiterate my earlier comments. Thank you to the council for your vote of confidence. Hopefully I will serve, hopefully I will attempt to serve the office of Mayor Pro Tem with all its perks appropriately and to the best of the ability as the mayor. Hopefully you won't take any vacations, no leave of absences, and not the initiation that you gave Mr. Holman those first few weeks. But again, thank you to the city staff for all that you do and to all the residents for making, because it's not only what the staff does and what the city council does and what the volunteers who serve on our various boards and commissions do, but it's also the residents of this community that makes this community what it is, and how you you take care of your community, you take care of your neighbors, you watch out for one another, and you look out for the best interests of this community, and you raise your concerns to various individuals, whether it be someone on the board or one of your council members, to bring it forth for discussion. So continue to do that, continue to be an advocate for this community, and we may not be able to please everybody, but we try to do our best. And that was one of the things, as I recall, a conversation I had with my neighbor on why did I choose to run for council. And initially it was that whole Marine Corps thing. You know, I didn't get selected by or appointed, so I chose to run for office and was elected. But the overarching theme and driving force beyond that just basic competitiveness was just wanting to be a part of something great. And one of the things, as Mr. Circle had said, has been an optimist. One of our lines in our Optimist Creed is to think only of the best, to work only for the best, and expect only the best. And that's Raymore. If you look at we are fast becoming the largest community in Cass County. We are what I would call the front door to the KC Metro from the south. So as those are coming up through the Joplin, coming up through the transportation pipeline into the community to deliver their goods and services, they pass through Raymore. And they see what is all the good things that are going on in Raymore. So, and that's not just who you see on the videos and you see at ribbons cuttings. That's through those you see at the grocery store, those you see out cutting their grass, those you see out participating in the parks, all the different activities. So continue to have a love for this community, continue to show your support for this community, and continue to raise your concerns to this community so that we can help make Raymore even better for those that comes after us. So again, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of things. I also want to congratulate Mr. Townsend on his selection as Mayor Pro Tem, albeit a shortened term of office of 10 months, but what the heck, you know, it's still Mayor Pro Tem. Second item, a little update. Mr. Holman brought it up about the development that's going on. They did finally finish the streets out there at Prairie View off of Hubach Hill Road, and they're ready to start building some homes out there. And I understand from talking to Mr. Otis that they're looking for a couple of builders to put up potentially as many as 9 spec homes. And so we're hoping that they'll move forward with that project, and we'll start seeing rooftops go in out there. They did put the final layer of asphalt on today. Looks really nice out there. If you get a chance to go out, inspect those lots and see what they've got going out there. It will be a pretty view. That's a pretty high spot of land, actually. It actually sits up pretty high. So I'm anxious to see how that goes. And then finally, I am looking forward to Chief Zimmerman's presentation in 2 weeks. I know that she's worked very hard on it. She's actually briefed Mr. Fearborn and I as she's progressed through the items that she wants to bring up in that meeting to show to our community how prepared our police department is for the future and how we equally treat everybody within our community. Some of her recruitment efforts, albeit kind of tough right now with the way things are going. A lot of things on Facebook today are telling folks don't apply to be a police officer, and I'm afraid that's going to have an effect on our recruiting options and efforts, but I'm hoping not, and I'm hoping that she'll shed some light for the regular community that doesn't really have a real inside to what's going on in the police department unless you've been to one of our police academies or come to these meetings on a regular basis. But you will see why we are so confident in our chief and her abilities to lead. And with that, I have nothing else, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Holman?
Your Honor, I move that we adjourn this session of the Raymore City Council.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Barber?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. The motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? 8-0. We are adjourned. Thank you.